All right, welcome back to the War Room. I'm here with Thomas and Bert. And hey, we got video, guys, and maybe it took us 4 times to get everything sorted, but hey, we're here. We're live, not really live. It's pre-recorded, but we are looking to break down all the crazy sports stuff that's happened over the last week, and that really has been between the NFL draft and the first round of the playoffs. There's lots to go over, guys, and we're going to start with NFL winners and losers, and then we're going to transition to some key points in the NBA playoffs round 1 that is almost over. We're waiting on the Sacramento Kings and the Warriors to finish up their series tomorrow night on Sunday. So without further delay, let's go ahead and go right into the winners of the NFL draft, guys. Thomas, if you were to pick a overall winner, whoever did the absolute best in how they managed their picks and how they picked, who would you pick and why?
I would pick the Houston Texans. Clearly, they want to win now, and you saw that in how they drafted. I mean, you drafted your franchise guy at 2 and C.J. Stroud, most accurate quarterback in the league, which is something you need. Quarterback is passing, you need to be accurate. But then you saw them trade back up to number 3 with a haul and draft Will Anderson to really anchor down and be the franchise edge rusher for that team. And you just saw throughout the later rounds, just through rounds 2 through 7, how they address key needs. They drafted a center to protect C.J. Stroud. I mean, they just killed the draft. I mean, the only really downside of the draft is they might have given up a little too much for Will Anderson to trade up. But the interesting thing is that they traded they traded our pick and we kept Cleveland's pick, which shows the confidence that they have in the roster going into next season, being that we're going to be better than Cleveland, so that their pick that they have for us, the first round pick that we gave up, is going to be lower than the pick that we have for Cleveland from the Deshaun Watson trade. And just how they approached the draft, they really just changed the culture of that team and the whole roster, just from how they drafted. And you're potentially looking at a 7, 8, 9 win team next season, potentially for the play-in, maybe even like winning the division. Who knows? But just seeing all the moves that they made, it's hard to not say the Texans.
Yeah, and you bring up the interesting point of, did they overbid for that 3rd overall? And I think when you consider the fact that they gave up the first round next year, that when we have 2 first rounders next year because of that Deshaun Watson trade, I believe, from last year. When you're looking at the next year, okay, we still get to have a first round draft pick, and more importantly, we used that pick trade. We gave up pick 33 and pick 12 to get to move up to 3, and then we also gave up next year's. Obviously we had to bid high. But I do think the Texans made a smart move in not drafting Will Anderson at 2nd and trying to get C.J. Stroud at 3rd and do the bidding war then, because with C.J. Stroud off the board, for the teams that are interested in a quarterback, there's a big drop off from the obvious 2 front runners and Bryce Young and C.J. Stroud, right? So once you eliminate that 2nd of the 2 hottest quarterbacks in the draft, then I think the actual bidding price for that overall 3rd goes a little bit lower. It's still high, but I think it would have been a lot higher had they gone Will Anderson at 2, and you still left one of the 2 best quarterbacks in the draft, or pick 3. And then you've got teams like the Colts trying to see if they can go up and get him. You've got the Titans that could have entered that conversation. The Cardinals are willing to just sit on that thing and just draft whoever they want. You could even see, the Texans are obviously going to want to. We're trying to trade up for that pick. So I think if you do the opposite of what they did and draft Will Anderson first and then try to get C.J. Stroud at pick 3, there's more teams that are in that bidding war. It becomes a higher price than what it ended up being, which is already pretty high. And then as far as was it the right move, in my opinion, you paid a little more for what was the safer of the 2 first round picks, right? C.J. Stroud had a really good college career, had an amazing finish to it, even though it didn't go the way he wanted. I mean, he put up, I don't know how many points against the number 1 defense in the nation and set up what would have been a game-winning field goal. And had just overall a very, very, very impressive season. is a dual purpose player. He can run, he can throw, he can stay in the pocket, he can throw out of the pocket. He's got a lot of the tools you want. Obviously, it's just, can you translate to that next level? Is the mental ability to process plays and make decisions there? Is your ability to deal with that narrow accuracy window? Is that there as well? That's questions with every quarterback in this draft, with the somewhat exception in the accuracy perspective with Bryce Young. But I think they did a good job in how they went about that scenario when they wanted to get both those guys. I also like how they did with their later picks. I mean, you think about Tank Dell, right? He's a guy that's had over like 1,700 yards overall in just last season alone for U of H. He's a guy that is dynamic. He can do kick returns. He can be put in the backfield. He's primarily a slot receiver. He absolutely balled out for U of H. And I think he's a dynamic player to add to our receiver core, possibly as a wide receiver 3 or a wide receiver 4 at the minimum. But I think he'll immediately impact the game on special teams. You think about their 4th round pick with Dylan Horton. He's a guy from TCU that could be kind of a sleeper. He had 10.5 sacks last season and a team leading 15 tackles for loss. I'd be very interested to see if he can bring a spark to our front 7 that desperately needs some defensive pass rushing talent and really just some overall young talent in general. And it's kind of been at a drought for the last 2 seasons. So even though that was just a 4th round pick, I still think there's a lot of upside to Dylan Horton. So pretty much picks 1 through 4, I'm pretty happy. But Bert, I kind of want to see it from your perspective. Do you feel like, one, the Texans did good overall, but more importantly, number 2, do you think they kind of overbid to get Will Anderson?
So overall, the Texans did phenomenal. I mean, just from the 2 positions and the value that those 2 positions have in the NFL right now, I mean, the highest paid players on rosters are quarterbacks, of course. You go back now, going back into the defensive side of the ball, the next guys that seem to be getting paid a lot of money and have a lot of value on teams is your edge rushers. I mean, you've seen that in the draft over the past couple of years with guys like T.J. Watt, Aiden Hutchinson, Nick Bosa, the list kind of Myles Garrett. The list kind of goes on and on with players of that position group. But here's another interesting point. So in dealing with the idea of, did the Texans overpay for Will Anderson? It's like, so think about last year, in last year's draft, right? You had Aiden Hutchinson go number 2 overall, I believe, to Detroit, right? So question for you, who led the league or the college football last year in sacks? It wasn't Aiden Hutchinson. It was Will Anderson Jr. A lot of teams had Will Anderson Jr. going number 1 overall in last year's draft. So this idea that, Will Anderson, you're paying all these first round picks for this guy. Well, let's not forget, he was supposed to go number 1 overall last year. So this idea that you're getting him 3rd, I tend to like that value. Now, another point that I kind of wanted to make about what the Texans did is, Kohl, you kind of brought up the idea of, what if CJ Stroud was at 3, right? Well, that's what the Texans were playing with going into the draft, right? You started seeing all these rumors coming out that, CJ didn't have the IQ. He didn't do well on an IQ test. Well, what you're alluding to and what the Texans are trying to get is they're trying to show that Will Anderson Jr. isn't going to be available at 3. CJ Stroud is going to be available at 3. So I think what the Texans did was they basically walked this tightrope with that 3rd overall pick. And what they said is, we're going to try to get CJ to look bad to other teams. We're going to try to decrease that value on him, so teams are not as willing to pay that steep price at number 3. So what that does is it opens the door for us to move in at number 3 and get him. So I really like what they did. I think you have to really tip your cap to the Texans front office, not only getting, CJ, but Will Anderson as well. Just phenomenal move and finagling of the draft system to get both of those guys. Both big-time players and both going to be a big difference maker in Houston moving forward.
Yeah, and I guess my direct follow-up question, mainly because I agree with everything you just said, so there's nothing else to talk about. My follow-up question to you is, do you have another winner other than the Texans? I know there's a whole lot of the teams that made some moves, multiple different trade ups, trade downs. Who of the other teams left would you say is the next biggest winner?
So I really like what Philly did. They're coming right off of a Super Bowl in which, it didn't end exactly how the way they wanted it to. But the biggest thing that I saw in that Super Bowl is just the inability to get pressure on the quarterbacks. And I mean, I get it. Fletcher Cox, I'm never going to say a bad thing about, another Mississippi State guy. But there's the fact of the matter is those guys are getting old, right? You need to get some new face and some new talent in there. And you've seen that in the past 2 years with Philly. They've been hitting the Georgia Bulldogs really hard. And I mean,
Jordan Davis. Strategy. Yeah.
It's a great strategy. The idea is, Georgia has proven over the past 2 seasons that their defense is the best defense in college football. So, hey, why wouldn't that transfer over to the NFL? And I mean, you saw that with Jalen Carter and
Nolan Smith.
It's a genius move. And if you look at both of those guys' values, I believe Jalen Carter, some people had him going at 1 overall.
Yeah, it was a huge possibility.
I think it was off-field.
I saw the lowest. Yeah. The lowest I saw him, I think, was at 10, and they got him at 9. So in terms of value, I think there's some value there. And then
his own agent wouldn't let him have conversations with anyone outside top 10 because he was so confident he was going top 10.
And then Nolan Smith, kind of switching gears a little bit, they had him in the top 15. The Eagles got him at 30.
Oh, that was a steal. Oh my gosh, that was a robbery.
It just shows, I think, that the Eagles are all in. They're like, we got to the Super Bowl last year. There's no reason we shouldn't be walking away with the championship after the end of this season. And
it's not a rebuild, it's a reload.
I don't know if you guys saw Micah Parsons' reaction.
I did. Yeah.
He comes up. He basically was like, I don't get it. Like, it's not fair.
Yep.
The system is rigged. And I tend to agree. I mean, as a Dak Prescott fan, I mean, again, I said Mississippi State earlier. I don't know if Dak Prescott is going to finish the season. I really do not. I don't think there's a team in the NFC East that is capable of dealing with that front. So, anyway, I tend to think that the Eagles had a fantastic draft. If the Texans didn't win, definitely Philadelphia won.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that, and especially with the fact that they were able to they did have to trade up from pick 10 to pick 9, which is kind of weird. I'm not sure if they were hearing on the phones there was a bidding war. Maybe they got on the phone and asked them, like, hey, is anyone trying to trade with you? And they were like, yeah, someone's trying to trade, and that's why they made their move. But at the end of the day, when you get your guy, you get your guy. And Jalen Carter was absolutely the best thing for them, because you think about it, they're losing Ndamukong Suh, they're losing another couple key players on that defensive line, and they're a team that needs someone that can translate immediately. And as we saw last year with like Jordan Davis on that team, they're doing a good job at getting people on that defensive line in particular that translate immediately their rookie year. Not to mention they're also really deep in talent. So, while he's trying to figure himself out those first couple games, maybe in the first half of the season, they're able to keep him on a tight rotation and keep guys fresh, keep him fresh, not let him get bogged down to injury or anything, or any super high workload. So I think it'll be a really good environment for him to come in and be able to develop at his own pace without costing a loss of defensive production overall. Now personally, I think one team that maybe has kind of fallen under the radar with how good their pick ended up being is the Chargers. I mean, you think about them with getting essentially the receiver that I think completes their offense, in my opinion. You think about them getting Quentin Johnston at pick 21. This was a guy out of TCU that was projected to go 12th at the latest. I mean, he was a wide receiver that could even be top 10 potential. And when you think about it, I mean, him sliding all the way down to 21 for the Chargers, I think it's a great weapon for them to keep around with Keenan Allen and Mike Williams if he can be healthy, which he really wasn't last season. But it gives a third option for Justin Herbert over there. He's a really good frame. The only negative to him is sometimes he can be a little slow off the ball. But I mean, we heard that coming out of college with DeAndre Hopkins, and look how that turned out. The biggest thing is he's got the really big frame. He's got the overall, burner speed for long balls. He's got the ability to separate from people and use his body to get separation for catches. He can be your long ball guy. He can be your slant guy that again, uses that big body for separation, good wingspan, all that good stuff. I think them getting him at 21 is a really, really, really good pick. And I think it kind of falls under with how much value they got in that late of the first round. I'm curious to see what you guys think about that.
Do you think that he could potentially be like another Mike Williams?
I think that's his direct comp. I mean, I think I think on par for him is to be a Mike Williams. I think above par is for him to be.
But here's the thing. Mike Williams is just stupid and consistent.
That's the problem. Yeah. But that's why that's like his par.
Issue?
No, I think Mike Williams is like his par for his first 2 years. I feel like a reasonable comp for what he could be, just numbers wise, not different frames, but just numbers wise. When you go into like year 2, year 3, I think if he is production wise on the same track as what Terry McLaurin is for the Commanders right now, I think that's success. He's a different style player than Terry, but I think if you look at the track of production from year 1 to 3 that we've seen for Scary Terry, that's kind of what we should expect out of him. So I think he has a lot of upside, and with his frame in particular, I think that's a big steal to get at pick 21. For whatever reason, wide receivers were not going early in this draft, and they really didn't. It's not that they didn't go that high in the draft before, but we haven't had any wide receivers that have been like a top 5 pick in a couple of drafts. So it's been kind of interesting to see how that pans out. But overall, I feel like that's a steal at pick 21. So
I tend to
go ahead, Bert.
go ahead. I'm sorry. Oh, pause. Okay, sorry. No, I think it's a good pick. I like the system that he's going into as well. I mean, just from being able to spread the ball out and being able to guard defensively. I mean, Justin Herbert and Austin Eckler. I mean, he comes into a system that he's not going to be a singular target. He's gonna they're going to be able to spread the ball around, and I think he's going to have a lot of success. In not San Diego, Los Angeles.
Yeah. I wish it was still San Diego low key, but
Maybe not for me.
Yeah, I mean, but what other winners do you guys see in this draft? I mean, kind of just going down some of the other picks. I mean, hey, I think Miami. Go ahead.
I think. Oh, you want to go?
Let's
go. You want me to go?
Let's go. Bert first, then Thomas.
So I'll tell you who I really like. I kind of thought this was a steal, but Darnell Washington at 93.
Yeah.
Pittsburgh. It might not be, like a, stellar pick in the idea of, this is just, it fits the system. But I really think it's more of the talent that you get at that depth in the draft.
It's also the size you get at that position. I mean, geez, man, 6'7".
Yeah.
Sheesh.
I mean, I saw this guy play with Brock Bowers, and I think Brock might have covered his abilities up a little bit, especially when you're playing on a team like Georgia who has all that talent. It's kind of hard to show yourself off in a place like that. But I really liked what I saw from him. Very athletic for his size as well. We'll see what happens with him in Pittsburgh. But again, for the value you're getting at 93 overall, seems pretty solid to me.
So for me, I think someone that we really like, we're sleeping on low key. Witherspoon going to Seattle. Like, just think about this. You have Tariq Woolen and Devin Witherspoon, opposite sides on the defense of that Seattle team. Just think about that.
I agree. I think there's a lot of potential for Devin Witherspoon to thrive in that system. I mean, he's a guy that he has all the corner covering abilities that you need. He could even go play in the upper half of the secondary if you need him to. But I think he's also a guy in that Illinois defense that is not afraid to stick his helmet where it needs to be to make a tackle, right?
Yeah.
He's not at all scared about that. I think he's willing to get his nose dirty. He's not one of those corners that's like, oh, I'm really just kind of a cover guy, and then whatever else comes with that. I think he's a guy that is everything you want in a corner and more, and I think he'll do really, really well in that defense.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. I mean, Seattle's big issue was literally their defense over the last couple of years, especially with Russell Wilson before he got traded. And the funny thing is that they used the Denver pick that they traded for Russell Wilson to draft Devin Witherspoon. But the funny thing is that, they would get lit up and then get into all these shootouts when Russell Wilson was there. I think it's very possible that you can see them being like a top 15 defense next year, at least in their secondary, maybe top 10.
Well, I have another question for y'all. What do we think about the Baltimore Ravens? They just got Lamar signed to a 5-year deal, 183 or 185, 186 million. Yeah, they get $186 million guaranteed for Lamar with a $260 million deal over the course of 5 years. And with them only having $186 million of that guaranteed, it gives them some ability to kind of put it on layaway and be able to flex the roster around to sign some free agents in this offseason. They were able to sign Odell Beckham Jr. to a 1-year deal. That's nice to get Lamar some weapons. And it was funny that happened before Lamar actually signed the deal. So maybe that was a way to kind of convince him, hey, we got you a weapon now. You've got somebody to throw to since Hollywood Brown left 2 years ago. And now they got him Zay Flowers.
Antonio Brown. Maybe
Antonio Brown. Maybe Antonio Brown announced himself.
Allegedly.
Ravens front office. Whatever you do not sign Antonio Brown. Whatever you do not sign Antonio Brown.
Hey,
you don't want that headache.
If Antonio Brown says he's on the team, he's on the team. Okay.
Oh, I have one more. I have a sneaky pick. All right, listen up. Devin A-Chain going to the Dolphins.
You're reading my mind.
You see that before we get into the losers, he dropped. I think in the third. He got drafted in the 3rd round, and the Dolphins needed because you had that little backfield. Jeff Wilson, Raheem Mostert. Mostert has issues staying healthy. Jeff Wilson's kind of just there. You get a speedster like Devin A-Chain who ran a 4.32 in the combine, bro. He is going to, not because I'm an Aggie, not because Kohl's an Aggie. Devin A-Chain was absolutely killing guys in the SEC. That Miami offense defense, he could be a potential sleeper for fantasy. But just a little thing before we move on into the losers. That's something to watch out for. That I'm like, you know what? This is a little thing. This is the little thing.
Well, and just like we talked about with Tank from U of H, he's another guy that can contribute immediately in special teams, right? I mean, Devon A-Chain basically, gave us a shot to beat Alabama, which ended up going through 2 years ago. Not last season, but the season before, with running kick return back for a touchdown. He's done that, in multiple occasions. He's got breakaway speed, almost Chris Johnson like speed for those old heads out there. And he's a guy that could even catch the ball well. He's not a running back that has brick hands. He's a guy that can translate his game to a multitude of different plays and formations. And once again, he can directly contribute on the special teams front as well. So you just get a lot of value out of him. I honestly, that's how I think you hit the nail on the head. Devon A-Chain falling to the 3rd round is kind of a steal. Because honestly, I kind of put him up there in the top 3 of the overall running backs. But I guess to kind of transition over to some losers, guys. I want to kind of see what you guys think of this. The Detroit Lions went and took Bijan Robinson. Yeah. The Detroit Lions trading. What did they trade? I forget exactly what happened. Thomas, do you have the specifics on what happened with the Lions getting Bijan Robinson?
The Lions didn't get Bijan. Atlanta got him.
Oh, I forgot about that.
At their pick.
Bijan.
Yeah, no.
Lions
Yeah, the Lions got the
We're gonna get
Alabama
into
running
both.
back.
We're gonna get into both, but I first wanted to start with Bijan. It's like it's not even the Falcons that are the losers of the draft. It's Bijan Robinson who's the loser of the draft because he couldn't have gone into the most pitiful situation ever. So we got to think about this. All right, you got a top on his own tier running back, one of the best athletes in the draft, who can catch out of the backfield, who can rack up them rushing numbers, get touchdowns, run people over, be a playmaker in the open field. Atlanta. One, not to mention, who doesn't know how to utilize top-end talent, and Kyle Pitts we see year after year. Homie had 1 touchdown in his first season. I mean, yes, he did get 1,000 yards, but dude, touchdowns are worth more than yards. And then you see Drake London, he was okay, but you know, he wasn't as consistent as you wanted him to be as a top, I think, 10 pick in the draft. Maybe top 5, I don't remember, but so you saw that, but then you get Bijan Robinson, and all I can think is that man got screwed. Like you not only did you draft him and you can't utilize young talent, but you put him next to your 1,000-yard rusher Tyler Algier, who's a second-year player. Like, I don't know. I just think Bijan is the biggest loser of the draft out of any team. It's Bijan. It's not even. It's a player. It's not even a team. It's a player.
Yeah, I mean, in Atlanta, you even got Cordell Patterson over there, right?
Yeah, that too.
I mean, they got a stable there. I mean, yeah, I mean, I think of Atlanta, and the problem was really more with their offensive line and also with their play calling and being able to utilize their offense. Also, you think about, quarterback issues. Marcus Mariota didn't do a good job. Yeah.
They need an O-line. Well, I mean, they have Desmond Ridder, so we'll see how that happens, how that turns out. But you need an O-line. You need a defense. Like, you need linebackers. You need people to help out AJ Terrell in the back or in the back end of the secondary. I mean, but you choose to draft a running back. I just don't get it. The Atlanta Falcons needs to disband. They're an absolute horrible franchise.
I don't know. There's something.
Caleb Williams going to Falcons.
There's something with Bijan though. I think there's an idea that just his talent alone it will attract teams. I think that might be what Atlanta's thinking here is just the idea of, it's a name that we can put on our roster and maybe it'll sell some tickets. I don't know. But I tend to agree with you guys. It doesn't seem that in terms of a scheme, it doesn't really seem to fit Bijan that well.
I guess my follow-up question for this for whichever one of you wants to go first is, with the addition of Bijan, do you think this opens the door for them to trade one of their 2 running backs? My guess is they would trade Cordell Patterson instead of their number 1 bell cow right now. But do you think this opens up the potential for a trade?
I don't think they'll trade Cordero because, one, he's a big part of their offense because he can also play receiver, punt returner, kick returner. He can go other places. But Tyler Algier, I think he takes a back seat, unfortunately. I don't think they're just too stupid to do that, to trade anyone. Plus, you have to keep a backup.
Hey, they were stupid enough to draft Bijan, though, so you can't put this out of the ballpark just yet.
They're like the Steelers when they drafted Najee Harris.
Yeah, but I mean, yeah, it worked out for them. He's the number 1 running back for them, but it wasn't a bad draft. It was just weird.
I mean, that worked out pretty well for the Steelers, though. I mean, Najee is still pretty solid. Yeah.
I don't think it was necessarily a bad draft. Maybe they had just more pressing needs, but honestly,
exactly. You didn't have an O-line in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, they still don't.
No line in Pittsburgh, and you ran Najee Harris to the ground.
Yeah,
I mean, the reason why he was such a good pick is because volume, or especially in fantasy, volume is king. Like, you can get all the volume in the world and be a serviceable running back, but if you run him into the ground, you're only going to have him for like 2-3 years. I mean, you saw that with Todd Gurley.
Yeah.
I mean, where is he?
Sitting at home.
On a stretcher.
Yep.
And guess where he played last?
Atlanta.
Atlanta Falcons. I'm just saying. I'm just saying.
Folks, you heard it here first. Atlanta is where running backs go to die. You heard it here first.
Wasted careers in Atlanta, bro.
Speaking of bad running back picks,
Detroit.
Let's talk about Detroit.
So yeah, Detroit traded for that pick, right?
No, I thought they had it.
No, they traded with. So originally Houston had it, right? It was part of.
They traded with they traded down and to 12 from the Cardinals, who traded back up into number 6. That's right.
Mm-hmm.
That's right. Yep, I remember. Sorry, keep going, Bert.
More trading with the draft. But what do you guys think about Jahmyr Gibbs? I think. Go ahead.
In hindsight, right when they drafted him, I thought that was the dumbest pick you could possibly make because you had Swift, and then you had Montgomery from the Bears.
Yeah, David Montgomery. Yeah.
So you had that 3 running back head. It was like, why? But then you saw that they traded
DeAndre
Swift to the Eagles. By the way, another way that the Eagles could have won, because I think he can pop off in fantasy this year because he's going to be that lead primary back. I think you just run him back into that Swift role.
Hey,
Montgomery and the Williams role.
Question for you guys. Remember how I talked about earlier how like Philly is basically becoming Georgia North? Where did DeAndre Swift go to school?
Georgia.
Well, and to touch on DeAndre Swift, I really think the Eagles absolutely nailed that trade. I mean, DeAndre Swift went into the first couple of games of last year leading overall yards and fantasy production, right? And then he just had these on and off injuries where he was being played a little bit, but not a lot because he was playing hurt, but they still utilized him a little bit. Then he was out for a couple more games. Then he was back a little bit. Then he was out again. So,
Plus, you didn't have him in the red zone. Like, you didn't utilize him in the red zone like you used Williams. So he could never really pop off. He could never really have, like, last season, he had a couple explosive games where he was getting, like, 36 fantasy points. He had, like a $120 and 2 or 3 touchdowns. But they were long touchdowns that he broke off. But then as soon as you get to the red zone, you just see them just hammering away with Jamal Williams. They're throwing little slant routes to Amon-Ra St. Brown. I mean, that's my only thing is like, I think it might be the same deal just with 2 different running backs because Montgomery's that bullish running back who can run anyone over.
But he's also
and then
really
you have
small.
The receiving back but you also have the receiving back in Gibbs.
Yeah, it's really weird with the whole situation as far as last year with the Lions because when they did have both available, they were doing like what you were talking about, Thomas, which is very similar to what the Titans did in the early years with Derrick Henry, where it's like, okay, we're going to have our really big running back that is fast, but also just an absolute bowling ball. We're going to have him. Yeah, we're going to have our thumper be the guy that's supposed to, go from 25 to 25. The 25-yard line to the other 25-yard line. And when we get into the red zone, we're going to put in our little guy. And it just didn't make sense that they were giving the majority of the carries to kind of like your speedster that's really small, used to having kind of the secondary workload with last year being either Jamal Williams or even a little bit of David Montgomery. So with the Lions, it's very weird how they used DeAndre Swift, but what that resulted in is having a very, very buy low, possibly profit high off of that situation because all the Eagles gave up was a 7th rounder this year and a 4th rounder next year to get that. So like you want to talk about a low asking price. Like I feel like that was a really, really good nab for the Eagles, especially since they needed to add another running back to that stable because their running game was not consistent.
You have one of the most dynamic running backs in the NFL. I mean, a lot of people might be like, that might be a really hot take for people, but when you look at it, most of the time, whenever he had the ball, he was very productive.
Yeah, it was keeping him healthy last year.
Night and day. If you let him have, I know with the Eagles and Jalen Hurts, he's not going to get as many red zone looks, but I think he could get more looks than if he was still in Detroit with Jamal Williams. I really do, and I think with that, he's going to open up the offense in Philly so much more.
It's the exact, in my opinion, it's the exact same situation with Derrick Henry 5 years ago. When you start giving him repeated volume, and instead of putting his rotation on a play-by-play basis, and you put it on a series-by-series basis, and you just give a whole drive to him instead of constantly rotating him out every 2 plays, and you just go, okay, for this entire series on offense, we're just giving him the ball for 2 to 3 plays in a row, and you give him that volume, you give him that rhythm, right? That's what we saw when he benefited the most last year. Exactly. Just get him volume, and all of a sudden his efficiency goes through the roof, and the big plays start to happen. I said, he wears down defenses.
Volume is king. Yep. Volume is king. Title of the episode: Volume is king.
Yeah, and guys like Jamal Williams are guys that volume doesn't matter for them, right? They have that ability to just be rotated in every 1 or 2 plays and make explosive games for 8 to 10 yards at a time because they're able to kind of just find little gaps. But you have guys like DeAndre Swift and Derrick Henry who can really just be a constant 3 or 4 yards at a time and wear guys out. And then all of a sudden they break something open for 25 yards to the house. And I feel like if Philly uses him correctly in conjunction with Miles Sanders, then they have a good opportunity.
Well, let's not forget the fact, I mean, you're just equating Philadelphia's run game as well. You're not even mentioning what they have in the pass game with Jalen Hurts and A.J. Brown.
Exactly. It opens up. It opens up the offense.
Yeah. And the one thing they did lack, the one thing they did lack somewhat in the postseason that was kind of on and off was the run game. There was times they struggled to consistently run the ball. So when and part of that was on Miles Sanders, part of that was on maybe some of their not play calling, but maybe more their execution. I think Miles Sanders is an overall good back, but I feel like DeAndre Swift can do some things better than Miles Sanders can. I think Miles Sanders may be an overall complete player, and DeAndre Swift may have a little bit of work to do, but I feel like DeAndre Swift specializes more in punching the ball in the red zone than Miles Sanders can. But keeping it going, guys. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead, Bert.
I feel like Miles Sanders has been there a lot longer than I'm realizing.
Yeah, he's been there at least 4 years.
There.
Yeah,
he got drafted there.
Yeah.
I think honestly, a good comparison is DeAndre Swift is a rich man's Miles Sanders.
There you go. So I have a follow-up question for you guys.
Miles Sanders.
I got a follow-up question for you guys. There's 2 big things that could be potential losers here. One, I think, is more of a toss-up that it could be good, could be bad. And that's the Green Bay Packers for, I don't know how many, ever since
every first-round pick except Aaron Rodgers. Defense.
Or more importantly, just not a skill position player. So once again, just as is tradition, they're not going with a skill player, which a lot of Packers fans were really, really ticked off when that happened. But more importantly, they did get a decent edge rusher in Lucas Van Ness out of Iowa. I think he has a lot of talent. So a lot of guys, even diehard Packers fans like Ty Schmidt from the Pat McAfee show have even been like, well, I was really ticked off at first, but when I kind of slept on it, when I kind of woke up in the morning, I was like, well, one thing, last year, a lot of times our defense is what was failing us. We failed to get pressure on quarterbacks. We failed to close out games. I mean, this is a team that was a game away from being able to go to the playoffs. Now, obviously, they're kind of rebuilding with Aaron Rodgers being gone, but they've had this stable with Jordan Love just sitting there forever. It's time to put him to use, right? So, what do we think about the Lucas Van Ness pick? Do you think it was a good pick, or do you think they should have gone skill?
I think they should have gone skill.
I think it's a good pick. Bert, but I think it's a good pick, mainly just with the idea of Aaron Rodgers is gone. There's an argument to be made. There's really no point in getting a skill position. That we can't get him the ball like Aaron can. Let's really take this opportunity to firm up the defense and use that as a building block within the next couple of years.
Well, and I also think when you take into the fact that for whatever reason, wide receivers were going really low in this draft. I mean, you got Quentin Johnston going at pick 21. I mean,
you had Jordan Addison, you had Zay Flowers. You had so many good. You had JSN on the board. Why not pick him? Because yes, you have Christian Watson there. He's going to break out by all means, but you need to. Who's your wide receiver too? Randall Cobb.
Here's the thing about wide receivers, though. Wide receivers are becoming much more available in drafts nowadays. You can go. I mean, there's an argument to be made here that when did we pick up kid from Houston? Second round,
third round.
Third round.
He had some. There were some reasons why he slid because I think his 40 was a little slow.
No, it's just because he's 5'8".
But that's what I'm saying though. It's you're seeing more and more skilled players deeper within the draft. It makes more sense to go and get those high level guys on the defensive side of the ball, especially edge, which is such a valuable position high in the draft.
I kind of sit somewhere in the middle of that because I think when you take into account the fact that we didn't see a wide receiver go off the board until pick 20, then the buying price for wide receivers wasn't as high as it's been in previous drafts, like we talked about earlier. So I felt like, okay, you go into the second round, third round, and there's still some offensive talent there. And more importantly, what we didn't see a lot of in the second and the third round was a lot of edge rushing talent, and they got the second best one, in my opinion. So I felt like their sacrifice for getting an edge rusher in this particular draft was less than in maybe their combined previous 10. But, overall, it's like, okay, there's still skill positions to be addressed on that team. But I feel like if Aaron was still on the team and they were a skill position player away from being able to get over that hump and get back in the playoffs, it would hurt a lot more. But I feel like this is kind of more of for now, it's kind of neutral, but we're going to have to look at, okay, his play 100% determines whether or not this is good. If he gets like 7, to 8 sacks in his first season, great pick. Good job, addressed the need. Even though you didn't get a skill player in the first round, it's okay. If he gets like 5 or less, then it's like, what were we doing?
But here's the thing: you run into the same.
If you were Aaron Rodgers watching this draft and then you see what Green Bay did, what do you think?
I think I made the right decision.
You're literally laughing so hard in Green Bay's face. I mean, think about it. What really changed in that offense to make it better?
Nothing.
Seriously. I mean, you're literally Jones, going from Aaron Rodgers to Jordan Love, who you want. That's your guy. You spent a first round pick on him. Like you put him in the same situation as Aaron Rodgers. You only have Dillon, Jones, and Watson. That's it. That's all you have. And you're setting him up for failure. Like,
yeah, I think the argument. I think the argument can be made that once you lose Aaron Rodgers with that team, you're just in rebuilding mode, and you just have to take the best player. And I'm not sure with I feel like you can make an argument that with
on the board.
Well, but and there's an argument to be made that with how low we saw wide receivers go, maybe getting the rarity of edge rushing talent in this draft was the way to go. But there's also an argument to be made. Why not go Smith and Njigba with the 13th overall pick? I feel like with him going 20, that was a pretty big steal. I feel like he was projected to go anywhere from 10 to 16. I felt like 13 would have been a great pick to get Smith and Njigba right there. It's very weird what they did, honestly. Even though it could work out, it was weird.
Backfield. You have more. Think about this. This is how sad it is in Green Bay. You have more weapons in the backfield than you do receivers. Think about that.
Yeah, that's true.
That is that. Your offense is not going to – the only reason why that offense was somewhat productive last year is because of Aaron Rodgers. He had Allen Lazard, who, I don't agree with his contract, but that's a topic for another day. You had Randall Cobb, Allen Lazard and Randall Cobb both had rapport with Aaron. You have Christian Watson, who went absolutely nuclear in the second half of the season last year. But what's the common denominator? Aaron Rodgers was throwing the ball. You have a first-time starter in Jordan Love. I mean, he started a few games here and there. You have for a full season, you have a first-time starter in Jordan Love going into a really crappy offensive situation. Out of anything, if you're going to start a quarterback like that who lacks like real game experience, you want him to be put in a really, really good offense. You want him in, let's say, Justin Herbert went somewhere else, or let's say, even perfect example, Joe Burrow, he left, and you draft a quarterback. You want that quarterback. You're going to have all the possibilities. If the quarterback sucks, you know he sucks. It's not because he sucks because of the pieces around him, which Jordan Love is stepping into, and it's really unfair to him. But, that's just me. I'm a little passionate on that. I'm like, but
just a little.
Yeah.
Just a little.
I feel like it's a situation where there is no perfect solution there. It's all dependent on how good does Lucas Van Ness, whatever. If he winds up getting 7 or more sacks, he's good.
Second coming of Lawrence Taylor.
That's
amen, bro.
That's never gonna happen.
Bro.
That's never gonna happen.
I know it's not.
But that's the point. I think that's the point Green Bay's going. That's the point Green Bay's going with. They're trying to find something. Aaron Rodgers, your franchise quarterback, is gone. We need something.
And I think this points back to just how it's not mediocre, but it's just usually with drafts, we know, okay, with how good the receivers are, the receivers should go off the board before the defensive end talent should, or at least after the first 2 defensive ends are gone, or we know these quarterbacks are going first, and then the teams are going to have are going to be left with these main guys. Even sometimes there's like an offensive tackle that's like, this guy's got to go before anyone else is picked, regardless of what team, right? In this draft, there was none of that, except for with Bryce Young and CJ Stroud, and really more with Bryce and Will Anderson. Outside of those three, it really was like, okay, we know these 3 guys are going somewhere in the top 5 minimum, most likely 1, 2, and 3 in any particular order. After that, it was just like, what are we gonna do? I don't know.
Yeah, we talked about this literally the other day. Just like, it's a lock for the top 3. You can't go wrong with drafting one of these 3 guys: Bryce Young, CJ Stroud, and Will Anderson. You can't go wrong.
Yep.
If you pick someone else like Will Levis or Anthony Richardson, there's the problem, which I'm not really a big fan of the Anthony Richardson pick. I think he should have slid. But, that's neither here nor there.
But you just brought up Will Levis, which is just another attribution to your point. Like, we had people saying that Will Levis was going to go at 5, and he ended up sliding all the way.
You had people saying Will Levis was going at 1.
Yeah, well, yeah, there you go.
Yeah,
but, I mean, that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying, though. Is just it's more proof for your point that outside the top 3.
Can we just take a moment to applaud the Texans for avoiding the Will Levis allegations? Like, good job, guys. We didn't do what the Texans usually do, which is take someone like that.
Yeah, because we have a good front office now. We don't have that dumb butt chin Bill O'Brien in the front office anymore.
Amen.
That was a single, besides the draft and free agency and hiring D'Amico, besides this offseason, the best news Texans fans has gotten ever since they won the division a couple years ago. Bill O'Brien fired.
Yep.
Who is the operations dude?
Jack Easterby.
Fired. Gone.
I did a dance.
Look at how the Texans look at the Texans now. They're thriving.
Well, we sucked the last 2 years, but it was somewhat drama free.
Well, here's the thing: we sucked the last 2 years because we're still recovering from Bill O'Brien's stupid self ruining the franchise.
Agreed. Yep. Single-handedly, but double-chinly. So, or maybe even triple. I don't want to start counting the chins on that man. But more importantly, I think the Texans are in a lot better spot, and I do have to give respect to McNair for actually giving the people what they wanted and having a former player be our new coach. I've never wanted to pull harder for a head coach to work. Yeah. I mean, it's a guy that was our absolute hero growing up. I mean, arguably
it's defensive mastermind.
It's between him and Brian Cushing for the best linebacker in Texans history, and I wouldn't want to live on the difference. So, I mean, it's one of the coolest things I think we're going to get to experience as Texans fans. So, keeping the ball moving. Before we move on to the NBA first round, were there any more last minute losers that we think here? I mean, I tell you what. Actually, last specific question, then we'll move on to NBA. What do we think about Indy taking Anthony Richardson at pick 4?
I'm just not a fan of Richardson, so I mean, D, C minus, whatever you want. I mean, just anything but an A or a B plus. C or lower. You can throw a dart. You can pick one. I don't really care.
I'm kind of in the same boat. I mean, it's a risk. Let's be honest here. Like you have
huge upside, but very big of a risk.
Yes, it's either going to be the greatest draft pick in the history of the NFL or the worst draft pick in the NFL history.
But at the same time, they desperately needed a quarterback because they don't have one right now.
Here's the thing.
Well, here's my question: How stupid are the Colts going to look if Anthony Richardson is a bust, and then you have Will Levis that just goes off in Tennessee?
I mean, that brings up the argument. That brings up the argument, Bert. If you were Indianapolis and you're at pick 4, C.J. Stroud's off the board, Bryce Young's off the board. Who do you take a quarterback?
Will Levis. It's Will Levis.
You take Will Levis over.
Frankly, if I was Indianapolis, I think the one quarterback that was left after C.J. and Bryce was Hendon. I think he had the most to prove, or he had the most proven. Excuse me.
That's exactly what I was going to say.
Here's the thing. The Colts don't need a rushing running back. You literally have a beautiful rush game in Jonathan Taylor, a beautiful O-line. Well, no, top 15 O-line, top 10 O-line. There's been injuries, whatever. Just for the sake of the argument, let's say top 10. For the sake of the argument, they're historically pretty good.
I wouldn't put them outside the 15. I think they're 15.
Give them the benefit of the doubt, Cole. Just this benefit of the doubt. Let's say top 10. Because you're going to have people. Quentin Nelson's the anchor of that O-line.
They've got one really good offensive lineman. I'll give them that. The rest of them,
let's just say serviceable. Whatever.
That's right.
You need someone that can throw the ball. You don't need someone who can scramble. Because you have someone to run the ball. But the one thing that Anthony Richardson struggles with the most is throwing the ball.
Mm-hmm. Not necessarily from distance, but getting the accuracy redefined is the problem.
Exactly. Well, you
can chuck it.
You can have all the arm strength in the world, but if you can't throw it to a receiver, why does that matter? You're gonna overthrow, underthrow, throw picks. I mean, he didn't even get 20 touchdowns this season. He threw for over 3,000 passing yards.
So here's the thing. Here's the thing with the Colts, right? Over the past season, they've had a lot of issues with coaching. Yes or no?
100%.
Yeah.
Yes. So
I mean, you had Jeff Saturday as your interim head coach, who didn't even do good as a high school head coach. So I mean,
with new coaches comes a lot of scheme changes. If you're going to try to readjust that whole offensive scheme around Anthony Richardson and more of a running Lamar Jackson-esque type quarterback, okay, what do you have to lose with Anthony Richardson? Go for it. See what happens.
Well, here's the thing. You draft Lamar at the end of the first round. You don't draft him at the beginning of the first. I mean, that's a little different.
Fair. I'm with you, though. I don't like the pick. But, again, if he turns out to be the next Lamar Jackson, okay, you got me.
Yeah, it's a lot of risk. I guess I'm not necessarily going to say it's a D or an F. I think it's a C+. Because to me, it's like, okay, do you go with Hendon Hooker, who may or may not be 100% ready by game 1, and they really need someone that's ready for game 1 and is healthy? Or even though I think Hendon Hooker is the best of the 3 available, or do you go with Will Levis, who is just honestly the biggest question mark at all 3? But that's saying something because Anthony Richardson is a big question mark. So if it were me, I'd play long ball, go Hendon Hooker, but for them, they're kind of viewing it as let's play a long ball and try to develop him and have him serviceable by year 2. I mean, heck, we could even see like someone like Jacoby Brissett be marched out there for game 1. You never know if he's just not developing yet.
Jacoby Brissett than freaking Anthony Richardson. Are you kidding me?
I mean, keep in mind, if you're going to take a risk on somebody in the draft, I would do it on Anthony Richardson. If you're willing to take a risk, because that dude set records at the combine. He's the freakiest athlete we've seen in a couple of generations.
What did he do at Florida?
But here's the thing. That's the combine.
Loose. No, I get it. I get it's a combine. I think you have to factor in the fact that Billy Napier is the worst coach in college football history, and also the fact that entire Florida team was booty cheeks. Let's just be honest. So they had some talent in certain positions, but with a really terrible head coach and just honestly not a complete team on any side of the ball for an SEC schedule, it leaves a question mark as to how much he got dragged down versus how much he dragged himself down. It's a mix of both, but with the athleticism he brings to the table, there's an argument with, okay, if you're the Colts and you're willing to give this guy 2 to 3 years to develop into what he needs to be, kind of like with Lamar Jackson in year 2 and year 3, it's worth the argument. And when all you're left to pick between is Will Levis or Hendon Hooker, which Hendon Hooker is a strong argument, but I don't know if there's a lot of difference to live off of between Anthony Richardson and Will Levis, other than that Anthony Richardson has, I think, a way higher potential than Will Levis. So I think it's what it ultimately came down to. Again, there's a lot of risk with that. I feel like they could have traded down and possibly got at him, but hey, especially when it comes to quarterbacks, the saying is if you have your guy, you get your guy. So. I think it kind of concludes our draft coverage here, guys. I think we kind of hit everything that was the major stuff. So let's move on to round 1 of the NBA. And before anyone else says a word, I just want to say Jimmy Butler is the most clutch player in this playoff series across the board. No one else has put on a show like he is. The kid from Tomball is just absolutely crushing it out there. You're talking about in games 4 and 5, a combined 98 points over the course of 2 games. Hitting the shot to tie the game. That was an absolute just like prayer. But an amazing pass and catch to Jimmy Butler. And it was just a phenomenal clutch performance. It just seemed like, especially in game 4, in my opinion, when we saw those last 3 minutes between the Heat and the Bucks, it just seemed like every shot that Jimmy was hitting for those last 3 minutes, one of the 3 big 3 on the Bucks was answering. You're talking about Chris Middleton, Giannis, and Bledsoe. I've never seen and especially in a round 1 playoff series, I'm used to seeing like 1 or 2 clutch shots, right? Maybe one guy makes a clutch shot to tie it, another guy will hit another clutch shot to end it, right? In this case, it was 3 minutes straight of like lead changes that Jimmy makes a clutch shot. Bledsoe hits a 3 to tie it up or take the lead back, and it's a clutch shot with 3 minutes to go. 2 minutes to go, it's Chris Middleton hitting one, then Jimmy answers with a mid-range. There was at least 12 lead changes going into through those final 3 minutes, and it was one of the best playoff games in that game 4 I've ever seen, and one of the most clutch performances. You want to talk about a guy that literally just himself was answering the bell for literally 3 minutes straight in clutch time. I just haven't seen someone do that in a playoff series in so long. What do you guys think about Jimmy Butler's playoff performance in round 1 against the Bucks?
He is literally the greatest, essentially, like, I don't know, dude out there. Like, he's a dude. He's literally a dude.
What? I feel like Jimmy Butler goes off like every playoffs. I don't get it.
It's weird because
he had this conversation before.
He's a guy that's like, if he did this throughout the whole regular season, then he would be an MVP candidate, right?
No, absolutely.
And it's not like he's a scrub in the regular season either. He's averaging 23 points a game. Like that's almost all-star worthy. He has been an all-star before, a couple of times. He is a guy that, like, everyone playing in that league knows he's always a threat. But he's even talked about this in the regular season. He's like, I especially in the regular season, I'm not going to be that guy that does anything he will do anything that's required, but he's always going to try to play through his teammates, especially in the regular season. But then when he gets to the playoffs and the coverage starts to get tighter, people are not switching as much. And he in particular gets a little bit more one-on-one looks, which is kind of weird for the playoff scenario. It was so weird how the Bucks almost refused to double him for 4 games straight, despite him absolutely piecing them up. We're talking about a guy who dropped 56 points in game 4 and then 48 in game 5. And he didn't get near as much doubles as what he should have in either of those games, especially in game 5. He's just a guy that can, in those situations of the playoff, that's when he's willing to take more shots. He's willing to take threes, and he shoots a higher percentage of threes in the clutch in the playoffs than he does in the regular season, which is crazy. Usually it's the opposite. You think of guys like Paul George and James Harden, those guys' percentages and efficiency go down in the playoffs instead of up most of the time. And his efficiency and his overall volume of scoring and shot taking goes up in the playoffs. It's so weird. And when you talk about a guy who can be your primary ball handler, he's your guy that is a two-way guard and is one of the best defensive players in the league. He's won Defensive Player of the Year when he was with the Bulls. He's he's just a do-it-all guy. He's a gritty player. I've also seen someone who I've never seen someone who talks that much trash in the clutch and is like just. I mean, he was going back and forth with Bledsoe like they were playing street ball in Game 5 when he was down 2, and he's hitting clutch free throws. He's making the shots and everything. After he hits that shot to tie in Game 5, he's looking at the fans going, "It's real quiet. It just got real quiet." Like it was hilarious. It was like he was playing street ball out there.
Did you see Draymond in Game 2, sir?
That's true. I mean, now that's a different kind of street ball. But you know my feelings about Draymond. I feel like Draymond should get 25 to life for half the stuff he's done to the Rockets, particularly James Harden gouging his eye out, all kinds of stuff like that. I mean, the dude, it's really weird. It's like when he's off the court and he's just like doing interviews or like he's doing his podcast. I'm like, he's kind of a likable personality. He may look like Donkey from Shrek, but yeah, he's a likable personality off the floor, but then he goes onto the floor and turns into some kind of demon that he's stomping on people's sternums. He's gouging people's eyes out. He's constantly kicking people in the balls. It's like, okay, what part of you goes from the super likable personality off the court to when you put a jersey on and all of a sudden you're just like some kind of just, I don't know what to call him. Just like a villain. That's what he is.
Switch. He just flips the switch, bro.
I don't know what he does. It's so weird. I know I'm extremely for the Draymond guy, the Draymond fans out there. Like, you have to know that I'm coming as a diehard Rockets fan, where the Warriors continuously eliminated the Rockets in the playoffs, and it was in a dramatic fashion every time. And Draymond was at the pivot of it every single time. So there's some scars. So take it easy on us, okay? You guys got championships. We have scars, so we have a little bit of right to complain. That's all we get. But yeah, in regards to the Bucks and the Heat series, I have not seen more consistent clutch play from one person in a series in at least a decade. Like that was just an incredible run. And you got to look at this from the Bucks perspective. Like, they were the number 1 seed. Miami was a play-in team. And more importantly, they made history as the first team to get into the playoffs via play-in to eliminate a team, not just eliminate the number one seed. None of the play-in teams up to this point have actually made it through round 1. So you want to talk about history being made, 98 points over the course of Game 4 and Game 5.
Well, yeah, I think.
And then on top of that, you're on a team that lost Victor Oladipo, you lost Tyler Herro, and you eliminate the number 1 overall team, and you're doing so as the first play-in team to actually make it past the first round. I'm just not sure if there's going to be a better showcase during this playoff series than what we saw.
Having Giannis not be 100%, I think, kind of inhibited the series a good bit.
Yeah, he came back. He came back for Game 4 though, and he was there for a good chunk of Game 1.
Thing, though, it's whenever you have a player leave a team, I think it shakes things up. What makes teams in basketball click is they kind of can get a feel. They get their rhythm. And when you have a player, like especially somebody like Giannis who just controls the ball like he does, and like a caliber player like him moving in and out of the lineup, I think can have effects on a game and how well that offense can produce. So I don't know. I think Miami definitely clearly won the series. I mean, Jimmy Butler went off, but if Giannis was able to play more, I'm not sure if the series would have gone the same way.
I don't know. I think with how they performed
in
Game 5,
Think about this. I'm gonna lay out the land. I looked at these stats recently. Jimmy Butler was averaging 36.5 points a game. I think 5.5 rebounds and 5 assists and 2 steals. So someone may make the argument, well, he was shooting a lot. He probably wasn't efficient. Blah, 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 blah. He was shooting 63% from the field and 53% from 3. Are you telling me that was luck? He did that through 5 games. Bro, I'm telling you, Giannis there and everything.
No, I'm in 100%. I'm 100% agreeing with you that the way Jimmy was playing, there was no way the Bucks were going to win. He literally carried them through the series. Mm-hmm. But I mean, this idea that Giannis not being in the game had no effect whatsoever.
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
It doesn't seem fair to just say Giannis being out is Giannis is going to have an effect.
I feel like this series absolutely goes to at a minimum game 6. If not, it goes to 7 if Giannis is in. But I think with the way the Heat were playing, I think the Heat still come out of that 9 times out of 10. I mean, when I just saw the lack of like ability to, I mean, in game 4, the Bucks were at least answering the bell, but then we saw in game 5, like it was like none of their big 3 wanted to be the guy. We see like Giannis, like he goes 10 for 23 from the free throw line. We see Chris Middleton, he makes some shots, but he's very, very interested in deferring the ball to somebody else to start taking them when we get to those last 2 minutes. Stuff was getting really, really, really tight, especially when we got into OT. I mean, heck, when we were about to go to OT on that last that jump ball, Giannis gets the ball from the tip off and then immediately just tries to throw it almost into the stands, trying to get to Chris Middleton. Chris Middleton has to jump for it and whatever, but from those big 3, it just didn't seem like when we got to game 5 and everything was on the line that anyone wanted to step and be that guy. I mean, obviously they played well enough to send it to OT, but they should have closed out that game when they were up 4 with I think 8 seconds left or 2.5 seconds left, something like that. It was they were up 4 with like 8 or 12 seconds left, and they didn't close out the game. And then when they got in the OT, no one wanted to be the guy. No one wanted to step up. There just seemed to be across this whole series with Miami. I mean, yes, Bert, you had an excellent point. Even with Giannis coming back in game 4, when you have a guy that maybe has to have his minutes changed a little bit, maybe he's playing a little bit differently because he's nursing his back, it kind of makes your offense a little more dysfunctional. But overall, across their big 3, even when they had everyone in game 4 and game 5, I just saw an overall case of dysfunctionality, even to the coaching. I mean, when they made that shot to tie the game in game 5, there was at least a half second, most likely an 0.8 of a second or something like that left on there. And instead of using their timeout that gets burned, whether or not you go into OT or not, to inbound the ball from half court and just try to heave something up, they don't use it, and they do a stupid inbound play that had no shot of even getting a shot off. It was very, very weird. The commentators are wondering why didn't they use their timeout. I don't get it. But we look across the rest of the playoff bracket. The Lakers are in. They're into round 2. We're waiting to see if Golden State and the Sacramento Kings, which one of those two makes it in.
That series has been insane.
Yeah, I honestly did not think it was going to go to 7. I did not think it was going to 7. I did not have faith in the Kings, especially when De'Aaron Fox had that fracture.
I thought the Kings were going to win in 5.
Okay.
Yeah.
So here's my question for that series, right? So what happens if in game 4 that shot goes in? What happens? I think madness ensues in San Fran, because at that point in that series, the Kings go up 3-1, and you're going back to Sacramento.
Yeah.
I heard Stephen A. the other day, and they had an interesting question when they were when they were on First Take or whatever, and they said, if you're a fan, like, let me think about how they phrased it. They said, if you are which fan base is going to be more disappointed if they lose the series? The Sacramento Kings or the Golden State Warriors? And he had an interesting answer, and he basically said it has to be Golden State. For Sacramento to come into this series and to do what they've done, you're essentially going toe-to-toe with the defending champs. Last year, forget the fact that, you haven't made the playoffs in 17 years.
Or got a playoff win in 17 years.
You've basically been in the outhouse of the NBA for all that time. Now you have, clutch player of the year. You had Sabonis lead the league in rebounds. You had Mike Brown win coach of the year. Your whole entire team has changed course in the matter of one season. And now you're talking about think about how disappointed the series would be. But think about the Golden State Warriors, though. how much time left do we have with that core? With Draymond, with Steph Curry, with Klay Thompson.
I'd
Those
say
guys,
It's
2 to 3
really
years
just
max.
the Curry
Wow.
show. It's really just the Curry show at this point.
No, it is. You're 100% right. But that's what I'm saying. It's like, is there a chance that this series might be more of a changing of the guard a little bit?
I hope so. I mean, with my bias against the Warriors, I really hope so. But if there's one thing I've learned about the Warriors, they're going to get in these situations where it seems like darkness is about to ensue, and then they just pull something out of their rear end, and Draymond breaks a guy's leg and they win. I don't know. You never know with these guys with how they can show up. Like I said, my thoughts were once the series went 3-2 in favor of the Warriors, it's like, okay, I don't see Sacramento with the somewhat hurt De'Aaron Fox. He's got like a fractured finger and it's on a shooting hand. I'm not sure if they're able to win 2 in a row. They could force a game 7, but I don't know if they're going to be able to win 2 in a row.
That's what's so interesting about the Kings to me. It's just like, so you have De'Aaron Fox, who, by the way, if you've been watching the series, I don't know how you are not the biggest De'Aaron Fox fan.
De'Aaron Fox
averaging 30.
That man, and you know where he's from?
Cy
Houston, Texas.
Yep.
Another reason
Texas.
to love the kid. But I mean, so here's the thing. So he gets hurt, right? And immediately now all of a sudden it's like, okay, what can the Kings do? They've kind of lost their it guy. And then you have guys like Keegan Murray stepping up and shooting threes.
Sabonis.
Exactly. So I really like the Kings. I feel like, at least going into like next season and the seasons after that, I mean, how can you not feel optimistic about this team?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like they got a good foundation for sure.
So
it's very young.
No, it's so young. Now, I will say, if there's one factor in the series that has been interesting to me is Looney has been on Sabonis like white on rice. Like, he is all over him. Sabonis cannot get a rebound, and he has gotten whooped. Just whooped from a physical standpoint. Sabonis has taken a beating.
Yeah.
I mean, you saw Draymond in game 2.
It's almost like what Golden State would do to Capella in the Rockets series 3 years ago. It's like Capella would be a guy that would give you 16, 18 a game and would be very dominant in the regular season. And all of a sudden you get in a 7-game series with the Warriors, and all of a sudden he's just taken away as a factor, especially on the offensive side.
No, and you know what? I give Draymond a hard time, but that's part of that is Draymond is just.
Oh, it's 100% Draymond. Yes, I mean Draymond was the sole reason that Clint Capella was a non-factor in half of our series against the Warriors, unless he was just catching lobs from Harden wide open. Like Draymond is so good at just taking your best 5 player and taking away his passing lanes, and then literally just physically abusing them. Like never let them get comfortable. They don't get clean rebounds. They don't get they don't get to do what they normally do. They're always playing out of position. And yeah, as much as I call Draymond Mr. Triple Single, that part of his game is always there. He's always a threat to just take away your best player in spots 3 through 5. He could just do that.
It feels to me that Draymond is kind of a player that's kind of out of his time a little bit.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he would have been great for the bad boy Pistons.
Oh yeah, no,
he's a glue guy. Right, he's also a glue guy, so he's not expected to do a whole lot.
Oh yeah, the guy who beat up Jordan Poole, real glue guy. Yeah.
No, that's 100% Draymond's role on that team is just to be a physical presence in the middle and let everybody.
Yeah, and give 3 pieces to teammates. Yep.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. I don't want to dog on that too much, but that was wild. That video that came out, I was like, yeah.
Homie could fight freaking Jake Paul and rock him, bro.
But that's
bro,
a whole.
I would
point.
pay money.
I mean, that's a whole nother point with Draymond. It's just like, you had Jordan Poole get his paycheck at this past season, right? And so now the question becomes is, okay, what's the deal with Draymond? Is he getting his cut? And it kind of is goes back to what I was talking about earlier. It's like, how long are we going to see the Warriors stay this way? Are we going to see them, at a certain point you have to say, this was great, but time's it's time to move on.
Well, here's the thing. You also have to think they've been nailing their draft picks, besides Wiseman, but they've drafted Patrick Baldwin at the end of the third, who is a potential top 5 pick coming out of high school. You have Moody, you have Kuminga. I mean, you stack up some more draft picks, you develop, it's going to be you have Jordan Poole, it's going to be a really seamless. Like, whenever you're looking at Jordan Poole when he plays without Steph, goes off, all-star. Steph has been there most of the time, so he hasn't really. He averages probably about 25 a game.
That's fair though. That's
40
that's
on
fair.
about 40% from 3.
But here's the thing: it's impossible to maintain that type of success throughout years. I mean, for you to be able to do something like that is such a rarity. I mean, I get it. You know, we're blessed to see it with the Astros be able to carry that success through. And I mean, you're right on with draft picks and stuff like that. But I don't know. It just when you're in an era like that with a team, you have to realize like it's not going to last forever. It simply can't. So I don't know. To see how long it goes with the Warriors, I'm not sure.
Yeah. Last thing I want to talk about in regards to playoffs, guys. We've seen the Knicks move on.
The Knicks have won a series. Sorry, I had to throw that out there.
Orange and blue
miracle.
skies, baby.
It had to get mentioned in the pod somewhere.
I feel like next series, win or lose, New York burns. It's kind of like Philly. But let's talk about the Lakers and the Grizzlies though, because that series was really interesting. We have Ja Morant go down with an injury, then come back. We have Dylan Brooks getting beef with LeBron and kind of wake up an animal.
Dylan Brooks is the dumbest player in the NBA.
I agree.
Like, literally, he can't talk trash to probably the greatest of all time, arguably. So that argument that regardless of what it is, just to sake of argument, with probably the greatest player of all time, I'm a Jordan guy, so that's a lot for me to say that.
I'm a Jordan guy. But
to be fair, let's say the greatest of this generation ever. 100%. Ever and potentially in the history, you have some bum averages 35% field goal percentage, 10 points a game. He's literally he has the least amount of points in the playoffs, tied for the second worst he has the worst field goal percentage in the playoffs, tied for the second lowest points in the playoffs. He's one of the lowest in rebounds, steals, blocks, assists. He's tied with the most ejections. You can't talk. Until you're a multi-time All-Star, you should shut up.
He went to the University of Draymond, so that's where it's coming from.
He's doing this too much.
Yeah, it was so weird because it was just kind of uncalled for. It was like, I know the reporter asked a question that kind of sparked it, but it was like, dude, the last thing you need to do right now is bring yourself and the team more attention than it's already getting. You're a number 1 seed going in. Or no, sorry, were they a number 2 seed or number 1 seed? 1? Yeah.
Probably 2 seed.
You're a number 1 seed.
Nuggets are 1.
Yeah. You're a number 2.
Right. You're right. 2 seed.
You're number 2 seed or 1 seed, whichever it was, that got bounced early last year. You're going into the same situation this year. You don't need more attention. You guys are trying to make it out the first round and make it past the second round, unlike last year. This is a team that did not do well in the playoffs last year, and you're already kind of setting yourself up to add an extra element to this series. You guys deal with Ja Morant going down for a couple games in this series. They just didn't need to do anything extra. They just needed to put their heads down and focus on ball, and instead Dylan Brooks adds a whole other element into this game and a media war and this other crap. I just think it was uncalled for, but more importantly, I just think the Grizzlies are going to have some serious demons to address in this offseason with their roster.
Let Dylan Brooks walk. That's the answer to everyone's.
I would let him go and bring in Robert Covington. That's exactly what that team needs. A 3-and-D guy, someone for Ja Morant to dish the ball to and help defensively. That's what Dylan Brooks should be doing with his 3-foot wingspan. But I
with
feel like
his
that's
a nasty jump shot, bro. Look it up.
Oh my gosh, it's bad. It's bad. But yeah, I feel like that's a guy they could easily cut. I mean, well, not cut. He's a free agent going into this offseason. So I would just let him walk. Go get someone like Rocco, or maybe even PJ Washington from the Hornets. That could be a good grab for them. That could be a really, really good grab for them. But they just need someone to fill a spot and be a 3-and-D guy. But yeah, honestly, I felt like the Lakers did a really good job at playing that series. Right, we saw Anthony Davis be consistent. Finally, we saw him step up, especially in the last game. LeBron was playing the best basketball he's played the whole season. I mean, Austin Reeves showed up at certain points. I think it was just a really good job by them overall in the series, especially handling the extra drama that was put in there. Do we think that the Lakers can make it past the second round?
Who would they be playing?
I think the winner of the Warriors or Sacramento.
I think Sacramento would beat the Lakers.
Bert, what do you think?
I think the winner of that series is going to be very hard to beat. Just with what I'm seeing in the series, both of those teams are just solid teams.
Plus, when you think about it, I know the Kings are a 3 seed, but in reality, the Warriors dealt with a ton of injuries this year, which made them lower. Like when you think about it, they're not really a 6 seed.
Yeah, it's not exactly a 3.
The Warriors are like another, and the playoff race was so close in the West. Like that just shows how dominant the West is compared to the East. Like I bet you they were probably like 3 or 4 games out of the 3 seed. So they're in reality they could be potentially playing another 3 seed right now. I think the Lakers personally, who knows? Like you still have injuries with Anthony Davis. I'm highlighting. He can get hurt and miss the playoffs. So I don't know. I do think the momentum from the Kings the Kings Warrior series will beat the Lakers. I think it will be close. I think 6 or 7, but
here's the one thing I am a little concerned about in terms of like the winner of that series moving on to the Lakers. Having a 7-game series, especially with the ups and downs that has been the Warriors and the Kings, I think there could be a little bit of a hangover into the next series. I think that's a potential. Just from how physical it's been on both sides.
Okay, last question. I want to hear what you guys think. Just very, very quick, not even explanations, just so we have record of what our predictions are. For what we know now, who do you think's making it to the championship from the East and the West? Thomas, go with you first.
Who are the Sixers playing? It might be the Knicks. The Celtics.
Yeah, Celtics.
The Celtics from the East, and then the from the West. I think either the Kings or the Warriors, whoever wins that.
Bert, what you think?
I really, really hope it's the Kings because just think first year back in the playoffs to make the finals, or in the East maybe the Celtics or the Heat or the Lakers or the Kings.
Bert, who you got?
So, as much as I want to see a Miami-Sacramento series in the finals, I don't think it's going to happen. I think it's probably going to be Boston and whoever wins Sacramento and Golden State. I'm on the Kings. I want to see the Kings do it, but I don't know. I like their odds in Game 7. Just the fact that it's at home carries a lot of weight, but yeah, I'll go ahead and say it. Kings and Celtics.
For me, I think it's going to be, if I'm picking for the West, I'm picking between the Nuggets and the Suns. I'm going to lean towards Suns because they have more shooting ability between Chris Paul, Kevin Durant, and Devin Booker. But I think Western Conference Finals is going to be the Nuggets and the Suns. I think the Suns win it. And then I think on the East side, it's going to be this. I think it's going to be the Celtics or it's going to be the Heat. I think the Celtics being a little bit deeper than the Heat right now, especially after the Heat losing Victor Oladipo, losing Tyler Hero. I feel like it's going to be the Celtics that edge out in a Game 7 against the Heat. So I think you're going to end up with the Celtics and the Suns. But I'm kind of pulling for the Heat to go all the way, and then I don't really care who goes from the West. So
I totally forgot about Phoenix.
Yeah.
So Sacramento. If Sacramento wins this series, I think Phoenix would whoever wins that is going to win the whole thing.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's going to be tight. Hopefully, we'll get some shocking results. But yeah, I think this is about time to wrap it up, guys. We covered a lot, and hey, we got some video back. Hopefully, the production comes out all right, and we're gonna keep it improving. We're gonna keep making adjustments and keep giving you guys content. So thank you guys for sticking out with us, and yeah, signing off until next time.